Why do they pull away the moment you find your strength? You've seen it. The quiet shift. When you stop begging for love, when you finally stand up, speak your truth, and start walking with your head high suddenly, they become distant. The people you once fought to keep close begin to vanish. They say you've changed. They say you're different. But you know the truth, it's not that you've changed. It's that you've stopped being small. There's a strange loneliness that comes with becoming strong. You imagine that once you learn to love yourself, people will love you more. But what no one tells you is that when you stop being easy to control, the ones who fed on your softness start to drift away. And you wonder, was my kindness the only reason they stayed? Was my silence their comfort? You've spent years believing that goodness alone would protect you, that if you were patient, loving, forgiving, no matter how many times you were hurt, life would somehow reward you for it. But life is not a gentle game. Even Machiavelli, centuries ago, whispered a truth that still burns. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But what if fear isn't cruelty, and love isn't weakness? What if the real meaning is this: it's better to be respected than to be used. It's better to walk alone than to stay with those who only love you when you bow your head. So this story, this confession, this truth is for you, the one who has given too much, the one who's been told they're too intense, too sensitive, too much. It's for the one who keeps forgiving people who have long stopped caring, and for the one who's beginning to realize that kindness without strength is a slow form of self-destruction. Tonight, I want to tell you something that Machiavelli knew, not with cruelty, but with clarity. The world does not reward purity without power. People don't always see your heart. They see how much they can take from it. But strength, quiet, grounded, self-respecting strength, that is what draws real love, real peace, real freedom. So breathe. Let's walk into this truth together. And if these words find you where you are, if they echo what you've been afraid to say, stay, subscribe. Not to me, but to your awakening. Like this moment, share it with someone who's forgotten their power, because tonight, you'll remember yours. There's a moment that changes everything. It rarely comes with thunder. Often, it's quiet, almost invisible to the world. It's that night you sit on the edge of your bed, realizing that no one is coming to save you. The messages you sent won't be answered. The apology you gave won't be returned. The person you fought for has already chosen their silence over you. And somehow, in that heavy silence, something in you begins to breathe again. You look around and see the ghosts of your old self, the version that would have begged, reasoned, or chased just to feel wanted. You remember how much energy you gave trying to make someone stay, thinking that love meant never giving up. But there comes a night when giving up is not defeat, it's rebirth. You stop fighting for a seat at a table that was never built for you. You stop trying to convince people that you're enough. You start asking a quieter, stronger question. Why did I believe I had to earn love in the first place? That's when they pull away. The people who once felt safe knowing you would always be there start to sense your distance. You're not begging anymore. You're not explaining your worth. You're not handing out your energy like free sunlight. And it unsettles them. They say, "You've changed." But what they mean is, "I can't use you anymore." It's strange, isn't it? The moment you start respecting yourself, the room empties. You thought strength would draw people closer, that confidence would make them love you deeper. But strength changes the dynamic. It makes people confront their own lack of courage. It reminds them of the power they tried to bury in you. And those who thrived on your self-doubt can't bear to face your light. You were taught that being good meant being agreeable, that love required sacrifice, endless, silent sacrifice. But you've learned something Machiavelli knew long before. The illusion of goodness can destroy the very soul it tries to protect. When you hide your truth to keep peace, you don't create harmony, you create resentment. You make yourself small so others can feel tall. And that's not love. That's survival dressed as devotion. You used to fear that if you became strong, you'd end up alone. But now you see you were already alone. Even when surrounded by people, you were alone because no one was truly seeing you. They were seeing what they could take, what they could mold, what they could control. And when you stopped allowing it, They didn't know who you were anymore, because to know you means to face your power, and not everyone is ready for that. You start noticing small things. The way your silence makes some people nervous. The way your boundaries sound like rejection to those who only loved your compliance. You start realizing that some people don't want peace. They want dominance disguised as affection. And suddenly, you remember a line you once read, but never understood. Fortune favors the bold. Maybe it's not about conquering others, but about reclaiming yourself. Maybe courage isn't about fighting. It's about refusing to shrink. You begin to see people as they are, not as you wish them to be. You stop romanticizing potential. You stop rescuing those who don't want to be saved. You stop forgiving patterns and start observing behavior. The heart that once bent to please now stands tall, not in anger but in truth. You understand that love without respect is just attachment, that kindness without discernment is a door with no lock. There's beauty in this awakening, but it's not soft. It's raw. It hurts. Because for the first time, you're not numbing yourself with illusions. You're not pretending that they'll come back changed. You're not trying to fix what was never broken, it just wasn't yours. You feel the ache of detachment, and yet underneath it all, there's peace. A peace that whispers, you no longer need to be chosen to feel worthy. And so, you begin again. Not as a version that pleases, but as a soul that remembers. You start to walk differently, slower, steadier. You laugh less often, but more sincerely. You speak less, but your words carry weight. You've stopped performing kindness as an offering, and now it's something sacred given to those who can meet it, not consume it. The ones who pulled away didn't abandon you. They revealed themselves. Their leaving was the closing act of your illusion. And in their absence, something beautiful rises, a self that no longer fears solitude, because solitude no longer feels like punishment. It feels like truth. There's a stillness that comes after heartbreak, not the loud kind filled with crying or breaking things, but the quieter ache of realization. You wake up one morning and realize that peace doesn't come from people returning. It comes from you not waiting anymore, from understanding that love was never meant to be a battlefield where you lose yourself to prove your loyalty. You remember the nights when you thought if you could just be kinder, softer, more patient, they would stay. You kept rewriting yourself, sanding down your edges, muting your colors, praying that your gentleness would be enough to earn permanence. But here's the truth. People who leave when you grow strong were never here for your soul. They were here for their comfort. And your softness was never the problem. It was your belief that you had to offer it endlessly. There's a kind of danger in being too kind. The danger of being misunderstood. People mistake your warmth for weakness, your forgiveness for forgetfulness. But strength doesn't mean closing your heart. It means guarding it with wisdom. It's knowing when to love deeply and when to step back with dignity. It's learning that some doors must close, not because hate lives there, but because peace cannot. Machiavelli wrote of princes and power, of lions and foxes, but beneath his words lies something profoundly human. The lion stands tall, fierce, certain, unafraid to be alone. The fox moves with quiet clarity, seeing what others ignore, understanding motives without resentment. The art of life, he hinted, is to be both. To live with courage, but also with discernment. To love with an open heart, but not a blind one. You start to understand what that means in your own life. You can be kind, but no longer naive. You can forgive, but never forget the lesson. You can give love freely, but not your dignity. You stop trying to earn what should have been freely given. You stop chasing after people who only respond when you beg. And in that stillness, you begin to taste freedom, not the loud, rebellious kind, but the quiet liberation of self-respect. You look back at who you were, the version of you that thought being good was the highest goal. You realize that good often meant obedient, predictable, easy to control. You wore your empathy like armor, believing it protected you, but it was also a leash. Every time you said yes when you wanted to say no, every time you smiled through discomfort, you were teaching others how to use you. And it worked until it didn't. Until your soul grew tired of pretending that peace could exist without truth. Strength isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. It's knowing that sometimes love looks like walking away. Not because you stopped caring, but because you finally started caring for yourself. It's understanding that people who truly see you don't demand your silence. They honor your voice. They don't fear your boundaries. They feel safe within them. You used to fear being too much, but maybe too much is exactly what's needed in a world that rewards pretending. Maybe the fire in you isn't meant to be tamed. Maybe it's meant to light your way out of the dark. The moment you stopped apologizing for your intensity was the moment you became whole. Because your truth, raw and unpolished, is not a burden. It's your freedom. And yet, even as you rise, there's grief. Because growth always comes with loss. The ones who left weren't villains, they were mirrors. They reflected the part of you that once needed approval, the part that still whispered, "Please stay." But now, as you stand stronger, you can whisper back, "It's okay, you can go." Because staying small is no longer love, it's a slow death of the self. You start walking differently now, not faster, but more purposefully. You speak less, but your silence has gravity. You no longer seek validation from those who cannot meet your depth. You find beauty in solitude, in quiet mornings, in the sound of your own breath. You start trusting your instincts again, the same ones you once ignored to keep others comfortable. The truth is, they didn't pull away because you became strong. They pulled away because your strength exposed the imbalance. It showed them what they never wanted to admit, that your softness was never weakness. It was power misunderstood. And when you stopped offering it unconditionally, they lost control of the narrative. You stopped playing the role they wrote for you, and they didn't know how to love the real you. And yet, even as they fade, you don't hate them. You thank them. Because in their leaving, they handed you back yourself. There's a strange beauty in watching yourself rebuild. Not in grand gestures, not in some cinematic moment of triumph, but in the quiet rituals of ordinary days. You wake up earlier. You drink your coffee slower. You walk without rushing. You stop explaining your silences. There's something sacred in not needing to be understood by everyone anymore. For the first time, peace feels like something you can hold. You begin to see the world differently, not through the lens of fear, but through the clarity of truth. You realize that most people wear masks, not out of malice, but out of survival. They hide behind charm, kindness, even love, because facing their own emptiness is too terrifying. Machiavelli saw this centuries ago. People are not purely good or evil, but self-interested. And when you understand that, not as cynicism but as wisdom, you stop taking their behavior personally. You stop asking, "Why did they do this to me?" and start asking, "What in them needed to do this?" It doesn't excuse their actions. It just frees you, because you no longer live in the illusion that everyone who smiles wishes you well. You start listening beneath words, watching how people act when they have nothing to gain. You start seeing not just their light, but their shadows. And instead of fearing them, you simply recognize them. You stop falling for potential. You stop romanticizing brokenness. You stop trying to fix what only truth can heal. You used to see life as a test of worthiness, as if love were a prize to be won. Now you understand it's a mirror. The way people treat you reveals what they see in themselves. The way you respond reveals what you've learned about love. And when you start loving yourself from a place of strength, not scarcity, something shifts. You stop craving what hurts. You stop chasing what hides. You start attracting what stands still. There's an ache that lingers, though, because freedom, while beautiful, is also lonely. You miss the illusions, sometimes the sweetness of being wanted, even if it was temporary. You miss believing that love could fix what only self-awareness can. You miss the fantasy that if you gave enough, you'd never be abandoned again. But illusions are soft prisons, and truth, even when it stings, sets you free. You learn the art of restraint, not the cold kind that shuts people out, but the quiet kind that knows when to hold back. You don't give all of yourself in the first moment anymore. You let people earn their place, not because you're calculating, but because you've learned the value of your energy. You've become both lion and fox, brave enough to love, wise enough to protect that love. You no longer confuse openness with exposure. You give with intention now, not desperation. There will be people who misunderstand this new version of you. They'll say you've grown distant, arrogant, guarded, but they don't understand that this isn't a wall. It's a boundary built from self-respect. You're not closing yourself off. You're simply no longer available to what drains you. You've stopped auditioning for love. You're already chosen by you. And then something beautiful happens. You start meeting different kinds of people. People who don't flinch when you speak your truth. People who admire your depth instead of exploiting it. They don't mistake your silence for weakness. They understand it as presence. You realize that love doesn't have to be earned through pain. It can be peaceful, mutual, steady. You had to lose the wrong ones to recognize what the right ones feel like. Still, you carry a quiet sadness for the version of you that didn't know better. You remember the girl or boy who gave endlessly, who thought love meant never giving up. You remember how it felt to be invisible in your own life, to perform kindness like it was currency. You hold that version of yourself with tenderness now, not judgment, because they were only doing what they were taught to love enough to be safe, to please enough to belong. But you belong now, even in solitude. You belong to the truth you once feared. You belong to the silence that no longer feels empty. You belong to the rhythm of your own heart, beating strong, steady, alive. You no longer need to be the savior in every story. Sometimes, the most powerful act of love is to let go, not in bitterness, but in peace. And when you do, the world changes color. The same streets look softer. The same mirror looks kinder. You realize that strength was never about hardening. It was about remembering who you were before the world taught you to doubt it. Remembering that being feared in Machiavelli's sense was never about cruelty. It was about commanding respect by embodying truth. And when you live that truth, love doesn't disappear. It transforms. It deepens. It finds you where you are unhidden, unafraid. There comes a time when silence stops being heavy and starts feeling holy. It's when you realize you no longer owe anyone your constant availability. You no longer feel guilty for choosing yourself. You no longer apologize for your boundaries, for your voice, for your truth. It's the quiet revolution, the moment you reclaim your power, not through revenge, but through peace. You start noticing how life softens when you stop chasing approval. You no longer measure your worth by how many people stay. You stop checking who viewed your story, who texted first, who remembered your birthday. You no longer crave validation because you've built something far stronger. Self-trust. That's the foundation of true strength. It's not about control. It's about knowing you can survive even if everything falls apart again. You begin to understand the subtle wisdom behind Machiavelli's most misunderstood words. It is better to be feared than loved if you cannot be both. But fear, in this sense, isn't about dominance. It's about reverence. It's the energy of someone who respects themselves so deeply that others must do the same. It's the unspoken boundary of presence, the way you walk into a room without needing to prove your worth. People feel it, even if they can't name it. They treat you differently when you no longer treat yourself as fragile. You used to confuse love with endurance, the ability to withstand, to tolerate, to hold space for others even when it hurt. But now you see that love is not measured by how much pain you can survive. It's measured by how honestly you can live, by how fully you can see yourself without flinching. Because truth, not comfort, not fantasy, is the highest form of love. You remember the times you stayed when everything in you wanted to leave. You remember shrinking to avoid conflict, pretending to be okay so no one would feel guilty. That version of you was pure-hearted but lost. And yet, you can love them now without shame. Because that's how strength begins, not in anger, but in compassion. You realize that you don't need to become ruthless to protect yourself. You just need to stop betraying your own boundaries. People will call it coldness when you stop explaining your decisions. They'll call it pride when you stop chasing closure. But it's neither. It's clarity. It's the understanding that you can wish someone well and still walk away, that you can love deeply without losing yourself in the process, that forgiveness doesn't mean returning, it means releasing. You've learned the art of seeing clearly, of recognizing who's capable of meeting you and who's not. You stop expecting loyalty from the disloyal. You stop seeking honesty from the insincere. You stop pouring light into those who thrive in shadow. And yet, you don't close your heart. You keep it open, but guarded by wisdom. You understand now that your love is sacred, and not everyone deserves access to it. It's strange once you rise into this strength, you realize how rare truth is, how few people actually live it. The world rewards performance, not authenticity. It celebrates noise, not depth. But you're no longer here to be applauded. You're here to be real. You walk differently because you've stopped performing goodness, you simply are. Not perfect, not polished, just honest. And that honesty has power. Sometimes, late at night, you still feel the ache, the loneliness that hums beneath independence, the quiet wish that someone could meet you here, in this clarity, without fear. But even that longing no longer feels desperate. It feels patient. Because you trust that what's meant for you won't require you to shrink. You've learned that real connection doesn't demand you dim your light. It stands in awe of it. You've become both soft and sharp, like water carving through stone. You've learned that boundaries don't close you off from love. They guide it. They protect it. They make it real. The fox in you sees clearly. The lion in you stands firm. You've finally become what the world could never handle: someone who knows their worth and doesn't apologize for it. So when they pull away, you don't chase anymore. You don't beg. You don't lower your voice to keep the peace. You let them go, because those who are meant to walk beside you won't be afraid of your strength. They'll be inspired by it. They'll see that your power doesn't erase your kindness. It refines it. They'll understand that your self-respect is not distance. It's dignity. You've become the person you once needed, the one who doesn't flinch at truth, who doesn't run from silence, who knows that love is not about losing yourself to be seen. It's about standing tall and still being open. That's the paradox of strength. When you no longer need to be loved by everyone, you finally become lovable in the truest way. There is a calm that comes only after the storm, a silence that feels like truth itself. You've cried the tears, burned the illusions, walked through the fire of loss, and now there's only stillness, not emptiness, just stillness. You used to fear this part, thinking it meant you'd lost everything, but you see it differently now. It's the soil after rain, rich and ready. It's the beginning of something honest. You no longer chase the ones who walked away when you rose. Their absence no longer feels like rejection. It feels like space. Space for peace, for real love, for people who see you not just what you give. You stop asking why they couldn't stay, because deep down, you know, they weren't meant to witness your becoming. They were meant to awaken it. There's a sacred power in solitude. It strips away every lie you ever told yourself. It shows you the faces you wore to be loved, the agreeable one, the forgiving one, the one who smiled through pain. And when all those masks fall, you meet yourself. You look into your own eyes, unguarded, and realize you've been searching for this person all along, the one who doesn't need permission to exist. Machiavelli once said, "Fortune favors the bold." People think it means recklessness, but you understand it now. Boldness isn't about aggression. It's about faith. Faith in your own voice. Faith in your own timing. Faith that life doesn't punish those who let go. It rewards those who dare to trust themselves. And so you do. You trust your strength, your silence, your intuition. You trust that not everyone deserves access to your softness. You trust that peace isn't something you find. It's something you choose. You used to think protecting your heart meant building walls. Now you see it's about building gates, ones that open to truth and close to pretense. You don't need to be feared or adored. You just need to be respected. And that respect starts with you, how you speak to yourself, how you honor your time, how you refuse to settle for less, than what aligns with your soul. There's a deep humility in this strength. You don't look down on those still lost in illusion. You understand you were once there too. You know how comforting it is to believe in fantasy, to hold on to someone who doesn't hold you back. You know how it feels to crave validation so badly you mistake it for love. So you don't judge. You simply stand where you are, as living proof that healing doesn't make you bitter. It makes you clear. The world around you still tries to pull you back. People who once dismissed you now notice your glow and call it arrogance. But you don't explain anymore. You don't argue. You've learned that energy is the most expensive currency, and not everyone can afford yours. You've stopped performing for those who never clapped. You've stopped rescuing those who cut their own ropes. You've stopped making yourself small to fit into hearts that were never built to hold your light. And yet, in the quiet corners of your day, there's still softness. You still love deeply, still believe in kindness, still cry when the world feels heavy. Strength hasn't made you cold. It's made you conscious. You know where to give and where to stop. You no longer confuse empathy with surrender. You can hold compassion in one hand and boundaries in the other. And that's balance. That's mastery. When you walk now, people notice. Not because you're louder, but because you're real. You don't demand attention, your energy commands it. There's something unexplainable about someone who's found peace after pain. They carry both the wound and the wisdom. They smile differently, not with innocence, but with understanding. And maybe that's the greatest lesson of all, that life isn't about being loved by everyone. It's about being true to yourself, even if it costs you company. Because what you gain in return is sacred, a life aligned with truth, a heart that no longer betrays itself, a mind that no longer bows to fear. You realize that losing people isn't the worst thing. Losing yourself to keep them was. So when they pull away, let them. Bless them in silence. Because their leaving made space for you to finally arrive to your own life, your own peace, your own power. You no longer chase love, you radiate it. And those who can meet you there will stay, not because you beg, but because they belong. You've become the balance Machiavelli hinted at, but never lived, both lion and fox, both heart and spine, both kind and untouchable. You understand now that the truest form of love is clarity, and the truest form of power is peace. So here you are, standing in the quiet aftermath of everything you thought you needed to survive. You've lost people, illusions, versions of yourself. But what remains is real, unbreakable. The world didn't get gentler. You just stopped mistaking cruelty for love. You stopped believing that pain was the price of belonging. You've seen the truth behind the masks, and it didn't make you bitter. It made you free. Machiavelli once spoke of rulers and power, but his wisdom was never only for thrones. It was for hearts like yours. Hearts that needed to learn that goodness without strength is a promise the world doesn't keep. That it is better to be respected than adored. Better to walk alone than to kneel for crumbs of affection. You've learned that love is not about submission. It's about standing tall beside someone who can meet your gaze, not look down on it. There will still be moments of longing, flashes of the old ache. That's okay. It means you're human. But you'll meet those moments differently now, with grace, not desperation. You'll smile at your reflection and think, I made it out. And I didn't harden, I became whole. If these words found you when you needed them most, take a breath. You're not broken. You're awakening. And if they stirred something inside you, that quiet, knowing that you've been dimming your light for too long, then let this be your sign to rise again. Gently but firmly. Share this truth. Let someone else remember their strength through you. Subscribe not just to this voice, but to your own, the one that's been whispering all along. You are enough, exactly as you are. Unafraid, unhidden, unrepeatable. You are the lion and the fox, the heart and the fire, the truth itself.